Everyone wants growth in their business. It's hardly a controversial statement. But in order to get growth, you've got to be spending your time on activities that actually stand a chance of making growth happen. Most people are spending their time fiddling with things which are interesting, but don't actually have the ability to make real impact in your business. So in this video, we're going to be going back to first principles and looking at how exactly you're spending your time and energy and whether that has an impact on whether you're going to get the growth that you're looking for. In case you don't know me, my name is Olly Richards. I'm the founder of StoryLearning.com. It's a multi-million-dollar online education business. I'm also a mentor and advisor to other online education entrepreneurs. And what is at the heart of all of this is the concept of big tests versus incremental tests. I remember the first time I ever heard about this concept, I was in Russell Brunson's mastermind over a decade ago. And a very helpful guy in that mastermind would message me on Facebook and say, Ollie, if you want to solve this problem that you're trying to solve, you need to do big tests. Swing for the fences. Don't mess around tweaking this thing and that. Run big tests. And that always stuck with me. Just that one mindset thing has had a huge impact on how I've managed to grow my business in various different big leaps over time. So what's the difference between a big test and an incremental test? Well, if we look at a typical sales funnel, then you might see something like this, where you've got the emails that send people to the sales page, and then you've got the checkout page, maybe you've got an upsell or two, downsell, and then a thank you page. These are all the different elements of a funnel that you can play with in order to try and get a lift in performance. So a typical incremental change or an incremental test would be something like, well, why don't we try sending different types of emails, or maybe more emails on the final day? Maybe we can change the copy on the thank you page. All of this stuff are incremental changes. Now, incremental changes can, of course, add up to huge compound changes over time as one builds on top of the other, if you've got the right forces behind, the right traffic, the right buyer intent. And in the best cases, it is definitely true that incremental changes can all add up. That works in theory, but very often you're going to meet a fundamental audience disconnect, whereby it doesn't matter what you change. If the audience doesn't really want your thing or is not responding to your thing, then there's nothing that you can really make up for on the back. And so the danger of focusing on incremental changes is that you might not see the wood for the trees. Now, a big test will look quite different. A big test might be, all right, we've got all of this, but something's not working. So let's change the entire offer. Let's sell a completely different product. And yes, that means that all of this stuff will have to change, and we'll come on to that later. But do you see the difference in the size and scope of the test here? Rather than tweaking the shopping cart to try and get a 5% incremental improvement, we're basically chucking the whole thing out and saying, right, let's test a completely different offer to see how it works. Now, should you be running incremental tests or big tests? The answer is it depends. And you've got to ask yourself whether or not the thing that you're working on is working in the first place. Is it working at a fundamental level? And this is a very difficult question to ask because it involves potentially eating a huge amount of humble pie and being very, very honest about what you're doing and whether it's working. A good analogy is with property, where everyone likes to think that their house is worth way more than it actually is because they've got this emotional attachment and all of that. But there are certain realities. And one such reality, one very important reality, is whether your thing is actually working or not. Do you have traction? Do you have reason to believe that, yes, I've got something that people are really responding to here? Now, if you do, then your business or traffic will look something like this. It's already operating at scale. And if that's the case, then incremental changes, incremental tests can make a massive difference because you've already got some kind of scale. If you're running Facebook ads, you're making good money, you've got a positive return on ad spend in your funnel, then incremental tests will compound because you're building on top of success. But most people's businesses are not like this. Most people's businesses, if you ask the question, is it working? The answer is no, not really. We get sales sometimes, but it's basically all flatline. Now, if you try and run incremental tests on businesses like this, it is possible that you'll try some magical new combination of things and suddenly everything will take off and your business will resemble our successful one over here. But more often than not, incremental tests on this kind of business are simply not going to move the needle because people are not responding to what you've got in the first place. And so if this is you, and if you look at your business honestly and you think, this thing I'm doing is just not taking, then the only logical thing to start doing there is to run big tests to try and fundamentally change the dynamic. So what could a big test be? You might decide to run an entirely new offer. And most of the time, this is one of the best tests you can do because the offer is the single most important thing in your entire business. If you've got a great offer that people want, you don't even need sales copy because people will just want it. You could try an entirely new backend. Maybe you are selling a course on the meta ads and it's not really working. But if you can get to break even, then perhaps building an entirely new backend will give you the profit you're looking for. You might try to go to a completely different audience. Facebook ads just not working, but I think my audience is going to be hanging out on YouTube. So let's go and spend the next 2 years building a YouTube channel. Maybe you bring in entirely new stakeholders into your business. Maybe you say, this part of my business is not working, so let's spin it off and bring in a business partner who can then work on growth with this kind of entrepreneur founder energy, because that's really what this business needs in order to keep thriving. All of these things here constitute very big tests. And it's easy to see why you might not want to do this kind of stuff, because it looks like very big changes. If you change the offer, you've got to rebuild your entire funnel. If you build a new backend, well, that could take you months to do. If you go after an entirely new audience, well, you're starting from scratch. And this is obviously a big move here. Step one is to acknowledge that a big test of this magnitude is actually needed. But then step two, the crucial question is to ask yourself, how can I test these things as rapidly as possible? What you don't want to do is run a big test and then spend 6 months trying to build it out, only then to find that it doesn't work. The real entrepreneurial strength and genius here is in running big tests and doing it as fast as you possibly can, just to find those little green shoots, those little glimmers that can tell you, yes, this is an angle that we should be pursuing. And by the way, if you enjoy this kind of content, please like the video, subscribe to the channel. That really helps. You can also find a great deal more information in my 118-page case study, which sort of explains how my entire business works, including a lot of the mindset stuff that we're talking about here. So you can go and grab a free copy of that over at ollyrichards.co. Now, faced with the challenge of growing our business, what many of us do is we go out to consultants or marketing agencies to try to get help to grow our businesses. And this is completely natural. None of us are born with this knowledge. It takes years to develop the knowledge to know what to do, how to grow a business. And so it's completely natural that we look for outside help. But one of the big lessons that I've learned over the last 10 years, and it did take me over a decade to learn this lesson, so I hope it lands with you, is that there is a kind of structural limitation to the way that outside people can help you grow your business. And this happens because of the disconnect. They are not familiar with your business. They don't understand the DNA of the business. But also these kind of relationships that you have with agencies, mostly being on a kind of month by month retainer, puts incentives in the wrong place and makes it very difficult to get to the kind of tests that stand a chance of really growing your business. So when you bring on a consultant or an agency, they are only generally going to be able to help you with the things that you give them, the thing that you present to them. They can only work with what they've got. And so to go back to our funnel example, what will happen is if you bring someone on to help you work with a funnel, they are going to start to look at the existing assets. They're going to work with that stuff because it is the quickest path to get a potential result. If they can tweak a few things here and here and here and get you a 50% lift, well, they've demonstrated a very clear ROI, they've earned their money, you then want to keep working with them. And so all of the incentives are for external people to work with the things that you bring to the table. But hopefully by now you're seeing that there is a problem with this, because what if the thing that your business needs in order to grow is not incremental tests, but actually wholesale changes, massive big tests? This is where you run into a problem. And this is where you kind of get this realization that the founder entrepreneur really is the only person capable of growing the business through big developmental stages. External people are only going to be able to work with existing assets because that's what you've given them. That's what they've got to work with. That's their remit. They're also going to be blind to other options because they don't know the history of your business. Often in my businesses, when we are looking at options for testing, big tests that we can run, we think back through our back catalogue. What are all the products, things that we might have sold many years ago that we could revive and test over here? Or it's a relationship or someone on the team who might be able to do these things. We're really thinking outside the box and stretching our imagination as much as possible. But external people cannot do this. And so they're not able to suggest things. They can ask you to think of things, but joining up the dots can be very difficult when someone is very much on the outside. The other problem with running big tests is that they can be very slow to do. If you want to completely change an offer, for example, or add a new backend or whatever it may be, this can take months to actually put in place, even if you try it quickly. I mean, even a very kind of quick test can potentially take a month or so to put together. And this is not in the interests of someone that you are paying monthly, because they need to be able to demonstrate a return on investment so that they can keep the contract and keep working. And also what happens is when you run big tests, you're going to have an increased failure rate. Even though the failure rate doesn't actually increase, the size of the failures are going to be much bigger. You can try something and it can completely fail. And it's not the kind of situation that an external consultant wants to find themselves in. It is, however, the kind of situation that you want to find yourself in as owner entrepreneur. And so one of the really big lessons that I've learned over a decade of doing this is that if you find yourself stuck and you're looking for that growth, your best option, your only good option is to dust yourself off, pick yourself up and ask yourself, what are the really big tests that we could run here? What are the big changes we could make to our business in order to get the kind of results that we're looking for? This is our list from earlier. What is a completely new offer we could try? A new back end? How could we reach completely new audiences? Who are some of the people that we could bring in to help us? Big questions that will require a lot of effort, but stand the chance of doing this. This is my crude drawing of a pendulum. And a lot of people, when they're running incremental tests or operating within their comfort zone, they're kind of like, they're getting to here, the pendulum might swing to here. But what we really want to do is start the pendulum swinging right the way to the other end so that it stands as, because when it hits the edges, this is where you kind of start to break outside your comfort zone and get new insights, new realizations within your business that can fundamentally change anything. Of all of these things, it is the offer that is most likely to work. And so crafting an offer that people cannot refuse really is one of the most powerful things you can do in your business. This video over here, I'll show you exactly how to do that, how to craft an offer that they can't refuse so that you can grow your business and be really happy.